Hey folks, the usual question. If you can see me in the background, thumbs up, fantastic. Okay, so let's get moving because this is following on from last week. Last week you could almost consider being the curriculum for the next few weeks. So I promised that this time we would talk about products and services. So here's a question for you. Feel free to put something into the chat if you like. If not, just write it down for yourself.
Geoff can't spell.
Yeah, I know. I noticed that just as I put it up. Never mind. Here we go. What is your product and service? What is your product or service? What the hell is it that you sell to your clients? Be very, very clear on this. Is it a product or is it a service? Products tend to be tangible. Services tend to be intangible. Where does it fit? In other words, what type of product or service is it? Are you involved in consumer goods? In which type? There are 4 different types. There's convenience goods, there's shopping products, there's specialty products, and then there's intangibles or goods not required. But where does your product or service fit? Here's an example of service businesses. If you have a service business, everything up there is a service business. What I do as a business coach or a consultant is a service business. If you help people get loans, for instance, if you're a finance broker, that's a service business as well. So again, where does your product or service fit? It probably doesn't fit in here. I don't know if you're aware of it, but these 10 companies in the middle here own something like 87% of all products that are sold in the world that are, they're largely food products, but 87% of food products, the ownership's generated is held, concentrated rather, in only 10 companies. It's a scary thought because while we think we're competing, they're actually not competing. The classic is where you have AAMI insurance competing against NRMA, but if you move up, they're actually both owned by QBE. They have different marketing to approach different people. But again, the key question is for you, where does your product and service fit? So firstly, is it a product or is it a service? Is it tangible? Is it intangible? Is it a consumer-based one? Is it a business-based one? Where does it go? All of you on the call know me, so I'm not going to run through my background, but basically I've been around the block more than a few times. I'm known for telling no porkies. What you've got today is stuff that you can actually use. So there's not going to be a lot of blah, blah, blah. It's going to be good, usable information. Some will be quite challenging too. You're going to have to answer some questions. So time's short. First thing you've got to do is you've got to get things in order. People will tell you that business starts with leads. That's BS. Your business starts with having a product or service that solves a problem or takes away a pain from someone. And that's what it is. Business is essentially problem solving. There's a direct relationship between how much pain someone's feeling or how large the problem is and how much they're willing to pay to solve it. We're all familiar with the old story about the guy who's retired and he gets an urgent phone call from the manufacturing plant and they say, things aren't working. What can you do? Can you help us? And he goes in, he walks around for 10 minutes, pulls out a hammer and goes, bang, on one of the machines and everything starts working. And he gives them an invoice for 10 grand. And they go, but you're only here 10 minutes. He goes, no. It took me 50 years to understand exactly where to hit it with the hammer. So think about what problem you solve, how big is the problem, and therefore your charging should necessarily reflect the severity of the pain or the problem they've got. Here's 50 problems for business owners. Lack of time, lack of cash, unable to find a good team, not enough clients, fear of success, a lack of focus, not knowing where to go. There's a lot of problems out there that people need solving. Not all those problems up there are catastrophic or big, but you should think about what is the problem I solve? Now, here's a problem that needs an immediate solution. But a lot of people have a solution in search of a problem. In other words, they've got something they're good at, they think it's great, but they haven't actually talked to people to find out if people are willing to pay for it. Does it take away pain? So here's some questions for you to ask when you're setting up your product or service. And I would recommend every one of you step back and review your product or services at the moment. So what is the problem your product or service solves? Who does it solve it for? What pain does it relieve or remove or reduce? Is it a fit to your market? Is it still relevant? Will people pay for it? And how much will they pay and how often? How do you deliver this problem solution to them? And do you actually like solving the problem? There's a difference between having to take a job as a checkout chick or a night filled person in a supermarket because you need to earn extra cash to pay your mortgage and actually doing something you love. I have the utmost respect for people that are school cleaners and janitors and checkout operators. I ran supermarkets for 10 years, but not everyone there could say they actually love what they're doing. We're lucky as small business owners, we have the ability to do stuff that we actually love doing as opposed to stuff we have to do. So of all the products and services and ideas you've got, I've got 47 different products and services I can offer to my clients. What's your main one? What's the main pain solution that you've got for people? i.e., you've got a solution to the problem. And then what does your product look like? It doesn't necessarily have to be unique, although unique works best. But your product, how are you shaping the product? How are you developing it so it stands out? Don't forget, your product has to align with the needs of your client. Doesn't matter whether your client's someone you like or not. If they've got the problem and you've got the solution, you've got to make sure it lines up. Bain and Company, one of the world's most famous consulting companies, said that customers have 30 needs, and they're broken up into functional needs, emotional needs, life-changing needs, and social impact needs. You can pretty much fit every product or service into one of these subcategories here, whether it's fun and entertainment, whether it's self-transformation, whether it's avoiding pain, whatever it is, you've got to think about what does my customer actually need. Most customers want solutions that save them time or save them money or simplify something complex they've got to do all the time. They want a product that reduces their risk or helps them get more organized and more effective and efficient. They often want products that provide sensory appeal. So if you're in the allied health area and you're doing massage and you're doing chiropractic and you're doing those sorts of things, sensory appeal is very important there. And most of all, people often look for something that reduces effort. Too many words on this slide, my apologies, but it's very, very important information. Remember, customers choose a product or service based on their perceived value of it or how they imagine using it will make them feel. At the end of the day, people buy a product or service for the way they imagine they'll feel when they use it. So satisfaction from a customer relies on the degree to which using the product matches what they think it's worth or matches the feelings they thought they'd have when they use it. The customer's only satisfied if the value of the product is the same or exceeds their initial thoughts, or if it matches or exceeds the way they thought they'd feel about it. In other words, almost everything that's being sold is either being sold to remove a deep pain or to fulfill a deep desire. And the solution, again, the question is, what is the problem it solves and who for? Is it a market fit? What will people pay for it? You've got to be very, very clear on this. You know, is your product or solution still relevant? We don't sell cocaine, including toothache drops anymore. We used to. We don't even sell Coca-Cola with cocaine in it. That's no longer relevant to our marketplace. But you need to be clear on the deep pain it solves. Of course, if you've got a product or solution that matches that really matches your market, that reduces the pain, make sure when you deliver it, you don't leave people feeling like they're no better off or they're worse off than they are. In terms of market fit, some of you have seen this before. This is one of my favorite slides. The onions look awfully like corn cobs, so that's not a good market fit. The Australia Day merchandise thing from Base Warehouse says Aussie, 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 we. So apparently it was the French Australia Day, so that's not a good market fit. But the third one from the Trek bicycle store in London is a perfect market fit. Blokes get into trouble for spending money on their hobbies, whether it's golf or knife collecting or riding bikes. So for an additional $4.95, we'll provide a receipt that matches what you told your spouse you paid. Perfect market fit there. Many of us are in the right church, but sitting in the wrong pew. That means we can be in the place where our audience is, but we're not serving the right niche or subset of our audience. You know, I was talking to a member of BCW. We had a call earlier this week, and that's exactly how Kerry was feeling about things. She was in the right church, but not necessarily sitting in the right pew. If you've got a product or service you know people want, if you know it solves a real problem, but you're not getting sales, you need to think about maybe the people you're pitching it at aren't quite the right people. You might be in the right church, but definitely not in the right pew. Thing is, be very, very clear. No, there should be no mystery in what you provide to people. You should be very clear on the pain you remove, the problem you solve, and the outcome or transformation to get. And when you're talking to people about things, it's almost like having a menu. Is your menu easy to understand so people can go, oh, right, that's what you're offering, I get it? Or is it bloody messy and confusing? I see this time and time again, especially with service people or people who've got multiple products, is they do a menu or they tell people about things and it's all over the place. This will get you much more sales than this. The other thing is with your product or service, particularly if it's a service, do you have a process or a system or a map? Understand that people like blueprints. They like the surety of knowing that you have mapped out the steps in the process for them to get from where they're unhappy to where they're happy. Last year, I ran a training on signature systems, on how to create a signature system. My signature system for my clients down the bottom here where they're unhappy, it's called Detangle. And that's where we look at where they are, where they've come from, where they want to be. We run their business through 12 different attributes and pick the 3 we're going to work on the next 90 days. We do that for business and for them personally. The next level, we work on design. We design a business that fits around their life around their business. We look at personal productivity. We look at their marketing. We look at copywriting. We look at systems, policies, procedures. And the third level is dominate to depart. In other words, we make sure you're standing out in the marketplace and we help you put together your exit plan. So you go from unhappy to happy. That's my roadmap for my profitable life coaching program. You should create one yourself. People love blueprints and maps. The how, you need to be clear on how you solve things. You cannot have it wrapped up in mystery and all that sort of stuff. You've got to be very, very clear. This is what we will do to get the result for you. We'll do step A, step B, step C. How do you deliver the solution? The way you deliver it is often as important as the actual solution itself. If you're charging high price or a value for money price that's still high, and you turn up in an old jalopy instead of a nice Audi Quattro, then people might start feeling they're being ripped off. What format are you providing your product or service in? Are you doing it entirely online? Are you doing it face-to-face? Are you doing a hybrid with a mixture of both? Are you sending them a tangible product or is it all intangible? What format are you using? Should also think about this. So I told you, I've mentioned before about, Professor Chan Kim and Renee Mabong did this thing called Blue Ocean strategy. Red Ocean is where nearly all businesses operate, and that's pretty much competing on price. There's very little to differentiate you from everyone else, as the only thing that people default to is they compete on price, and that is a downward spiral to death, because you eventually get to the place where no one can charge anything cheaper and still keep their doors open. Blue Ocean, however, is where you are differentiated, where you have few competitors, where you're able to charge a premium, and where you're competing on value and outcome and results, as opposed to just the almighty dollar. Often what happens when I said right church, wrong pew, is people in the right church, but they're competing in the red ocean when they should be talking about value and outcomes and competing in the blue ocean. So why do people buy? People essentially buy for the way they think or hope they will feel when they use or own the product or service they pay for. There's 2 underlying drivers. There is the driver to seek pleasure or the one to avoid pain. Pain's the strongest one by far, so people love products that offer pain relief, that focus on benefits and not features, and talk to their emotions. Understand people buy emotionally and they justify logically. It's easier to sell a red convertible sports car when you talk about how good it feels at 180 k's going along the Great Ocean Road, hearing the surf break in with AC/DC blaring on the speakers, than to tell people it gets 600 kilometres to a full tank of petrol. Which one more appealing to you? I'd rather the red convertible story. Seen this before, Robert Cialdini wrote a book called Weapons of Influence. It's very dry reading, but every marketer in the world uses this now. There are now 7 steps. There used to be 6. There are principles. There's reciprocity, where you give people something for nothing or low value. They feel like they've got to give you something back. It's about being committed to them and being consistent. It's about providing social proof. Look, these other people just like you got a great result by working with me. It's about being likable, all right? It's about being seen as an authority in your marketplace. And you can always use scarcity where you say there's only 10 left. There's a lot of things there. Again, you can probably best find a summary of it rather than read the whole book, because like I say, it's a pretty dry read, but those principles are absolute gold. When you're creating your product or service, you need to think about your mix. If you sell more than one product or service, and most of us do, you need to pick your king product, which will make the majority of your sales, and set a budget for those sales. Then your second product or third or fourth product, you need to figure out what percentage of sales you want them to bring to you. This is the beginning of planning a budget, which is coming up in a couple of weeks, where we'll talk about sales and budget planning. But you must understand the mix of your products. What's the number one thing that people buy from you? Is it priced right? And is it giving you decent profit? I work with a thing called the cascade, where we get your product right first, then we promote it. From promotions, we generate leads. From leads, we get to have an appointment where we chat or pitch to people, and we end up with the sale. So remember, your product or service really has to provide a solution. Being in business is about providing a solution. So now what? We talk about this a lot. There are only 3 macro levers that drive every business. There is revenue, top line. No revenue, business doesn't exist. There is capacity. Capacity is, are you able to deliver the result to your client that you promised in the time frame you promised? If you can't do that, you've lost them and your reputation goes. And the last one is cost control. You've got to keep your costs under control. So generate enough revenue, make sure you've got enough systems to support giving people the result that you promised in the time frame you promised, and keep your costs under control. Next steps are pretty simple. There is really no silver bullet to creating a product, running a business, or growing them. But there are things like I've spoken about today you can do to make your path easier. The path is like this. It can be a maze if you're not sure. There's lots of different advice out there. You can go down the deep tube of YouTube, down the rabbit hole there, and come out no much wiser. But understand this. The bad news is time flies. The good news is you're the pilot. So you need to decide where you can spend your time to get maximum effect. The law of money simply states when you undervalue what you do, the world will undervalue who you are. So I think one of the first things I do with nearly all my clients is I get them to raise their prices by 10%. Have a look at your pricing and see how much elasticity is in there, and can you raise your prices? Because often, and understand this, you would have to lose 25% of your existing clients to make less money if you just raised your prices by 10%. If you think raising your prices by 10% will lose you more than 25% of your clients, don't do it, because you'll lose money. But I'm here to tell you it's very hard to see any circumstance where a 10% price increase leads to a loss of 25% of your existing clients. If you'd like a hand, it's really simple. Book a chat. There's a couple of you on the call here who've had free calls with me. It is a free call. It's not a sales call. I just want to understand your business and see if I can give you a hand or help you. Next time, we'll be talking about pricing, some numbers you need to know, and what is your value proposition and unique selling proposition. So look, thanks for chatting or listening. Let's have a chat. Please hop on. The link's in the chat already under my details. But if you want to know and you want to get some ideas to make your business going, let's have a chat. Is there any questions? I'm going to stop the share now, but I'll take them back in the main room. Thank you.